What's up, guys? Welcome to Vintage Genetics, where it is all about classic bodybuilding. Today is another Q&A. In the last video, I asked you to ask me a bunch of questions that you had in the comment section, so I picked a few of those, and also in my Instagram at Wesley Vissers, you also asked me some questions, so I compiled them right here, and I will answer them. That's a dog. I will answer all of them right now. So the first question, one question you asked me a whole lot right now, as tomorrow, actually today already and yesterday, there was the FIBO, which is the biggest bodybuilding and fitness expo in the world in Germany. And today it's April 5th on a Friday, and tomorrow, all Saturday, I will be at the FIBO, not at a booth, but I will be walking around. So if you walk into me, if you see me, don't hesitate to, ask me a question, to just meet and greet, because a lot of people always, when I go to these expos, they say, hey, I saw you, but I was too afraid to come up to you. So don't be afraid to come up to me, have a picture, have a talk, ask your questions and stuff like that. And also, my dad will be there and my girlfriend, and we will be having some Vintage Genetics clothing with us. So if you are interested in buying some, we mostly will have tank tops and stringers with us. So if you are interested, just so you know, we have some of those with us, because a lot of people also ask me when I'm there, do you have your clothing with you? And I always have to say no, such as the same issue was at the Arnold Classic. Of course, in America, it's difficult to take a lot of clothing with you, as I have to travel by airplane, but now I travel by car, so it is easier. And then the next question, will I be at the Bodypower in Birmingham, which is from May 10 to May 12. And yes, I will be there, but this time I will be having my own booth, Vintage Genetics, booth at B58. I will be there. I will give a lot more details regarding that, but we'll be there with all our most popular clothing, a lot of new clothing coming out as well, and perhaps even more. But yes, I will be there the entirety of the event at the Birmingham Bodypower Expo. So yes. So the first actual individual question by Sergey Alexashov. Hey Wes, how much beta-alanine do you usually take? Also, how often the tingling seems to go away as my body adapts to it? Actually, beta-alanine is a great way to buffer the lactic acid production, actually the acid production literally in your muscle. So what it does is when you, for example, hit 10 reps, you feel the lactic acid building up, and that prevents the oxygen, prevents the energy of the muscle to be released, to be used. And because in an acid environment, you cannot really convert energy that well to make it easy to understand. So what beta-alanine does, it takes the acid molecule and it buffers it. It takes it with it, so the environment in the muscle gets less acidic. So what you want to do is take beta-alanine pre-workout, but if you also take it throughout the day, it also works. However, a lot of people always want to have that tingling feeling that is dose dependent. If you dose it low, like 1 to 3 grams, usually you don't really get that feeling. But I like to dose it around 5 grams myself. There's a lot of studies out there regarding beta-alanine, and it really does work. It is one of the few proven supplements that actually work, like creatine. So beta-alanine is definitely something you want to have in your pre-workout. However, you don't need to take it pre-workout for it to work and have the same effect, but it is easy to take it pre-workout. However, again, don't confuse the tingling feeling with the amount of how it works, the amount of performance it'll give you, because you don't have to have it to actually get and reap the benefits. And in the very near future, I don't know if you guys have heard already, but I've mentioned a couple of times I will be coming out with my own supplements. It's being in the works right now, and I decide myself what ingredients will be in the pre-workout. One of them will be beta-alanine in a sufficient, scientifically proven dose. But yes, more about that later on. All right, next question by Rufura Monda. How often do you switch up routines, and what determines how long you stick to one? So he's talking about workout routines. I make personalized workout plans for people, and they always ask me, how long should I follow this workout plan? The thing is, that's not really a relevant question to ask beforehand, because you only notice how long you should follow a workout plan after having followed it for a longer period of time, because then a lot of people tell me, well, I'm starting to get used to the plan, the muscle ache, the muscle fatigue is starting to lessen, I'm getting used to the volume, can we change it up? So what you don't want to do is change it up entirely. What you want to do is change up some exercises, for example with the bench press. If you've been doing 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps, instead of that, do a drop set at the end or a paused set at the end with paused reps at the bottom. Adding things like that in every single workout will already give you another boost. What I always tell people, if you change up the entire workout plan, you prevent your body from building a strength foundation with the exercises you've actually gotten used to, because you want to get used to the exercise. You can actually get stronger over time. If you then switch up the entire order and start with, for example, dumbbell flies versus the bench press, you will decrease the buildup of strength you actually had at the bench press, and then progressive overload the entire system on which hypertrophy, aka muscle growth, is built upon, will be partially lost. So I always recommend keeping most of the same exercises in, but then changing the exercise itself from time to time by adding a superset, a drop set, or a paused set, for example. Next question by Mohammed Mazar. Why instead of going for classic physique competition, don't you prepare yourself for open or the 212 division? Your structure definitely supports that. What do you say, Vintage Genetics? Well, I'm a little too tall to go to the 212 division, but quite a lot of people, and people with knowledge as well and experience, have told me and asked me and presented to me the possibility of perhaps going to the open class, which means that I would have to battle, if I was at the Arnold Classic last time, with Brandon Curry, Josh Lenardowitz, Luke Sandow, the big guys. Do I see that happening in the future? I'm not saying no. So I'm not saying that I'm going to stick to classic physique, although I stick to the principle of what I think classic physique should be. That's what I will always be like. But as a bodybuilder, from the very beginning, my passion about it was to keep making progress, to work out as hard as I can to build up my physique more and more. Back in Arnold's day, and you guys know that Arnold Schwarzenegger is my bodybuilding idol, along with most of the classic bodybuilders from that era, they trained as hard as possible to get as big as they possibly could, while keeping in mind being aesthetic at the same time. Training their abs, their waist, keeping it down, having a nice V shape, having a nice V taper, having everything in proportion was to them very important, alongside having enough mass. That to me is the same deal. So if I at some point strive past the weight limit that I'm allowed to weigh at in classic physique, which right now is 247 pounds, which by the way is the exact weight that Arnold mentioned that he weighed at the 1974 Mr. Olympia. Around that weight, he said that live at the Arnold Classic at a seminar that I went to, where I saw him face to face. So that was pretty amazing to hear. I was like, wow, that is another sign that I'm doing the right thing here. Exact same height, I believe I have, and the weight, but I never actually weighed 247 on stage yet, so still have to reach that. Of course, the conditioning story is very different nowadays, but that's for another video. But yes, if I strive past that weight limit, I have no choice but to go for the open class, because I will not allow myself to put a barrier in front of making progress. I train in a gym to make progress, and I will keep the classic and vintage look, but if that forces me to go out of classic physique at one point, which I predict won't be anytime soon, then I will have to go to open, especially seeing how the class is evolving, how the winners are being chosen. I pretty much like where it's going. I mean, in my opinion, Brandon Curry has no bubble gut. Sean Roden arguably has no bubble gut, at least less than Phil Heath and guys like that. So I like where it is going. So if it keeps progressing, evolving, it might not even be a weird thing for me to go to open, but it will force me to take a few years, well, not off, but to take a few years to really build some quality mass, to be even able to stand up with those guys, to compete with them. But yes, that is my thoughts about that. Next question by Wes Miller. Do you train one muscle group in the beginning of the workout and then the other at the end? For example, back first and then biceps. Or mix it up with back and biceps one after another? No, that's not what I do. I had to think about that for a minute, but what I do is first, yes, I train back 4 to 5 exercises and then do biceps for 2 exercises, maybe 3 at the most, depending on how energized I feel or whether I feel I completed the workout already. But what you shouldn't do is train the weaker muscle, the assisting muscle, the biceps, before doing back. For example, you also don't want to train triceps first and then chest, because then what fails is the triceps before the chest. And if you do a lat pull down, you don't want the biceps to fail before the back. That's why you always have to train the bigger muscle group and then the assisting muscle group. But for example, if your back is a weak point and your biceps are a strong point, you don't want to train biceps at all. You want to, at least not right after training back. You want to train back on its own and then pick a separate day to train those biceps. And usually you just combine it with triceps for the synergetic superset effect. But yes, that's my answer. Next question by The Beast. How often do you do blood work? I like to do it at least twice a year. There's no need to do it too many times. It's the same way as weighing yourself every single day. And instead of once a week, you will get a lot of variance in the numbers. They don't actually represent a whole lot. Because for example, a lot of people are always worried about the liver enzymes being elevated even when they are fully natural. But what they didn't realize is that they trained the day beforehand, then you actually destroy, you damage muscle cells, and that damage is processed by the liver, and that in turn elevates the liver enzymes. So it looks like your liver is in danger because of its processing of the damaged muscle, the toxins actually getting released. Your liver is processing that. So if you do blood work too often, you might get values when you do it at the wrong times that you are like, okay, I'm not really healthy right now. But if you plan it out right, if you do it twice a year, maybe 4 times a year, for example, every 3 months, then you could get the values that you actually want to look for. Another example is when you want to do your cholesterol measurements, the HDL cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, you have to be fasted, and they always change depending on what you, for example, what you eat. If you eat the day before a lot of fatty foods, it might change the day after. So you really have to be vigilant about your timing of the blood work. So what I like to do is measure the liver values, the kidney values, the blood values, the cholesterol values, fatty acids, and of course you want to know, if you're a natural guy, what your hormone levels are. If you feel tired all the time, because a lot of people actually don't realize they have a low testosterone level. So you might want to get that tested just once. You want to test your estrogen maybe. If you feel, some people have gynecomastia, see if the high amount of estrogen is causing that. At least when you get as many numbers as possible, you know as much as possible about your body, and knowledge is power, and that enables you to do something about it. So I do think blood work is important to actually get an idea of what your body is actually like, whether it's in a healthy state or whether you can do something about it. And you can do so much with food and simple supplements, you have no idea. But you don't know what to do if you don't know the values. So yes, that is my basic advice on blood work. An interesting question by Khan Gabriel. Why do you always look great in training videos but look mediocre when you compete on stage? Wow. I actually agree. In training videos, when I'm posing right after doing a cable fly, for example, as the third exercise, of course I look great. I look fully pumped up. I lost some water through sweating. I am, all the carbs that I've been eating beforehand are inside the muscle, pushing the muscle against the skin. So I am in optimal shape at that moment. The reasoning for looking mediocre on stage is, well, we actually tried to figure it out. Actually, yesterday I went to the coach, and it has to do something with the water and salt manipulation. I looked a lot better this Arnold Classic compared to last Mr. Olympia by simply changing that up a little bit. We didn't completely get rid of the salt. We kept the salt in a little bit, at least with one meal that already helped. And with the water intake, we might have to change something regarding that, because I remember at the Royal London Pro videos on that contest are on this channel as well. I looked very dry there, partly because I didn't drink any water from about 8 p.m. the day before until basically the entire show, just little sips of water with the carbohydrate meals I took, and I kept it very simple. But the same thing with salt, I depleted all the salt there, so I was a little bit on the flat side. And that's what we wanted to prevent at the Olympia, but we went too far. We kept drinking a little more, keeping myself hydrated, but we also had a problem with too much salt, so I actually overdid it, so I peaked too soon. But at the Arnold Classic, we actually did it almost entirely right. We kept the water in longer. And the salt was a little higher as well, lower than at the Olympia, and the carbs were even more simple. But what went wrong is I think we have to up the salt a little bit and lower the water even more. Because when I train, when I work out, I drink a lot of water, I still consume quite a lot of salt. And of course, while training, you look great. So you shouldn't change too much when you know that you look great. But of course, the peak week for me is always the most difficult part, because you always want to go for that extra detail that you might not show beforehand. Because for example, my upper body always looks very great, but the legs still needed a little bit more detail, knowing who I was up against. And we also knew we could still do something about it. So that's why you sometimes try to manipulate water and sodium intake a little bit to try to bring out that detail. And usually it's a miss, but sometimes it's a hit. So that's why with the Arnold, we were very cautious about it. We didn't really take any risks at all. But that's why during workout videos and workout pictures, I look fuller because there's more salt in me. But my legs at the same time looked less defined. And that was kind of a game you had to play. So what are you going to go for? A very full look with a crisp upper body, but with slightly less crisp looking legs, or a very, as crisp as possible looking legs, but with the upper body looking a little bit more flat, and this time a little washed out. So I still looked very great in my opinion at the Arnold Classic compared to all the other shows, but still it could have been better. So that's my honest answer to why I look better in training videos than on stage. But next contest, guys, you will see a very big change in that. All right, next question by Polydoros Demetriades. After the Olympia and Arnold Classic, what changes will you make to your training and diet? Right now I'm in the off season. I'm lean bulking. Right now I weigh around 116 kilograms in the morning, and I'm only doing 3 cardio sessions of 30 minutes fasted in the morning. This morning I did so as well. And I also am not really doing a carb cycle. I'm really looking in the mirror. My carbs are consistent, around 400 to 450 grams right now. Lowered the protein a little bit, but then I look in the mirror and judge if I need to lower or up the carbohydrates. I also compare my weight to the previous week and see how I'm doing. Of course, I slowly want to add some weight without adding too much fat. And if I see that I look less defined than I want to look in the mirror, then I lower the carbs for a day or two and, lower it by like 100 grams. Just minimal changes, because you don't want to go overboard, because I want to start nice and lean with my next contest. But at the same time, as I'm in off-season and lean bulking, I'm allowing myself to go with a slightly higher fat percentage. The maximum will be around 8 to 10%, as usually I am around in between 6 and 8% year round, which obviously has to do with me having to be in contest shape all the time, because I have been doing contests since 2017 without really a break. So now I'm allowing it to go up a little higher, allowing my strength to increase, allowing more muscle to be built, to work on the weak points, and then slowly get down to contest shape once again. But yes, no real changes except for allowing myself to get a little heavier, get a little stronger, allow the fat percentage to go a little higher to build more muscle. And the last question, what are your future plans regarding vintage genetics and you as a bodybuilder? My plans with vintage genetics are to keep increasing the line of clothing to eventually have a really solid line that everybody likes. I can tell by the analytics of the website which clothing people like the most. It's usually the cutoff sleeveless shirts, the classic ones that you see right here, or these actually, the low, deep dropped armhole tank tops, the simple ones. These are very nice, stretchy, light material that hangs on your body, but very nice with training back, which I'm going to do today, because your lats are allowed to flare out of this tank top, which just feels great, no restrictions when doing all these back exercises. But yes, and on top of the vintage genetics clothing line, there will also be a new supplement line coming out. So that's what I always want to. I want to make it perfect. I want people to know that everything that I bring out, everything that I come out with is made and thought up by myself and not another external company. You have to keep in mind, my social media is pretty big, even though I'm still surprised every time I see the numbers. I really appreciate you guys following me and giving me feedback and comments and likes and stuff like that. But that does allow me to actually be in the crosshairs of a lot of companies who want to sponsor me. Big companies want to sponsor me, and I always have to pretty much turn most of them down, because then I would have to say, oh well, look at their product, it's the best, while I internally don't agree with 1 or 2 ingredients in there in those dosages. So I make a pre-workout with scientifically proven ingredients in the right amounts, the white isolate, protein complex, omega-3s, multivitamin, you name it. I will make sure that everything in there is backed scientifically and backed by experience of me having used them. And that combination, combined with an affordable price, not too high of a price, that's very important, I think will be a success. And yes, that's what I'm going to go for. So step by step, we're increasing the company, expanding it. Right now, we are forced to stay in Europe with the expos, the Bodypower Expo, for example. You have to imagine it's quite expensive to, we have to drive from the Netherlands with 2 cars towards England and Birmingham. It takes about half a day, if not more. And then with all the stuff, you have to buy the expo space, you have to stay there. It's all an investment, and then you have to hope that you make a return on that investment when you're there. Usually it's a break even, sometimes we even make more, but it's just a very fun process to meet everybody, and that's what I'm doing right now, investing a lot of time and money that is generated by the company itself, which is a very beautiful thing, by the way, and then trying to expand even more and getting more known throughout the bodybuilding community. And honesty and transparency for me is very important. To let you guys know that I try to be very honest about everything. So I want to take you guys with me in how I'm going to build all this up to be bigger and better, and you will be at the forefront of it, because without you, it wouldn't be possible. Your support allows me to do that. And I'm going to need your support even more when we want to expand to America itself, because that's going to be the big one. America is where it's at. One stat, for example, is more people from America purchase items from the vintagegenetics.com store than people from the Netherlands, even though it is located in the Netherlands. So that already tells you quite a lot of the potential that there is in America. But anyway, guys, enough about me. It was about your questions, and I want to thank you for even being interested in asking me the questions. And yes, guys, of course, I don't want you to forget to stay